Go ahead, move out, see if I care." Those words weren't whispered in anger or in fear. They were spoken with absolute certainty, dripping with arrogance. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, lips curled into that smug little smile she thought could break me. But that night, she had no idea she wasn't breaking me. She was setting me free. The room was so quiet that even the zipper of my suitcase sounded louder than her voice. Each pull of the metal teeth was a declaration. I was done playing the fool. She waited, oh, she waited, for the outburst she thought she'd orchestrated. The shouting, the begging, the collapse. But I gave her nothing, just silence. When the door clicked shut behind me, the weight I carried wasn't grief. It was something sharper, something cleaner. I didn't know it then, but the silence I took with me would one day slice her world apart. And let me be clear, this wasn't just about betrayal. This was about power, about her thinking she could gamble with my loyalty, my love, my dignity, and still expect me to crawl back for scraps. But she underestimated the one thing that scared her most. A man who stops reacting and starts planning. Before I dive deeper into this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed so deeply that your heart wanted to explode, but your mind told you to wait, to watch, to gather every piece until the truth itself became your weapon? If you've ever felt that fire, then stick with me, because what I uncovered and how I used it left her shattered in ways she never saw coming. If you're new here, take a moment to hit subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if your partner looked you in the eye and dared you to leave? I read every comment, and your stories keep this channel alive. But let's rewind, because this story didn't begin with that one cruel sentence. The seeds of betrayal were planted weeks before. Tiny cracks in her mask, little details she thought I'd never notice. The phone she turned away from me in bed, the sudden bursts of laughter in the middle of the night, the faint scent of cologne, one I didn't own, lingering on her blouse. At first, I tried to dismiss it, tell myself I was imagining things, that maybe the paranoia was mine alone. But denial doesn't erase the truth, it only delays it. And every time she flinched at my touch, every time her eyes darted away instead of meeting mine, the denial died a little more. And so, on the night she told me to go, I wasn't just leaving the house, I was leaving behind the illusion. What she didn't realize was that the man walking out the door wasn't broken. He was sharpening his blade, because by then, I already had a plan. Betrayal doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It seeps in slowly, like water through a crack in the foundation. At first, you barely notice. But one day, you look around and realize the whole house is sinking. For me, it started with the phone. Nights when her screen lit up and she angled it away, pretending it was nothing. The kind of quick, casual movements that only look casual if you don't know someone like I know her. I asked once who it was. She smiled too quickly. Just a friend. And maybe for anyone else that would have been enough. But not for me. Then came the laughter. Not the laughter we used to share, the kind that bursts out unplanned, pulling you closer together. No, this was different. This was private. A laugh trapped inside a glowing screen, one that I wasn't invited to. And every time it happened, I felt the distance stretch wider. The scent was the final straw. It clung to her blouse after a late night with coworkers. A cologne I'd never worn, never bought, never smelled before in our home. I leaned closer once, my chest tight, my heart hammering, and she pulled away. Not fast enough to be obvious, but just enough to sting. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe stress was making me paranoid, but deep down I already knew. And then, there was the night that confirmed everything. I reached for her hand in bed, just the simple gesture of a husband trying to feel close to his wife. But instead of warmth, I felt resistance. She flinched just slightly, as though my touch burned her with guilt. Her eyes darted away like she was afraid of what mine would see. That single moment spoke louder than any confession. My chest felt like it might collapse. The air turned heavy, suffocating. My fists clenched under the sheets as sweat prickled at my forehead. But I didn't lash out. I didn't demand answers. Instead, something inside me shifted. I realized that anger was useless. Screaming would only give her power. No, I needed something stronger, something permanent. That was the night I decided to stop being the blind husband. That was the night the fool she thought she was orchestrating died. From then on, I would play a role. The role of the man too trusting, too oblivious to notice. While in reality, I was already tearing apart her lies thread by thread. Because suspicion wasn't enough anymore. I needed proof. Not to fight with, not to beg with. Proof was ammunition, and I was ready to build an arsenal. I've always believed the truth doesn't hide. It waits. Patient, silent, buried under layers of lies, but always there. And I was done ignoring it. The night she turned her back to me in bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing like a machine I couldn't turn off. Every detail replayed, the way she angled her phone, the faint cologne, the nervous twitch when I touched her hand. My pulse was steady now, not frantic. I wasn't the betrayed husband anymore. I was something colder, sharper, a man preparing for war. When she finally drifted off to sleep, I slipped from the sheets and picked up her phone. Her passcode wasn't a mystery. I'd known it for years. What she didn't know was that deleted messages don't stay deleted. It took me seconds to access her cloud backups, and there it was, a world she thought I would never see. The conversations were pathetic. Shallow flattery, late-night promises of soon. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny, whispered longing into texts meant for someone else, a man whose name burned into me with every notification I unearthed. But I didn't rage. Not yet. I read with the precision of a surgeon dissecting a body. Every line, every emoji, every promise etched into my mind as evidence. Not just for revenge, but for control. Proof wasn't just truth. It was power, and I wanted more. The next morning, when she left for work, I sat down at the computer. Phone records, bank statements, hotel reservations. Each thread I pulled unraveled more of her carefully constructed web. Every withdrawal, every late-night Uber receipt, every unexplained charge, it all painted the same picture. She thought she was clever, hiding in plain sight, but the more I dug, the more her lies collapsed under their own weight. I could have confronted her right then, papers in hand, demanding answers. But what would that have given me? A screaming match? Crocodile tears? Empty apologies? No, that would have let her win, because she would twist, manipulate, spin the story until I was the villain. So I smiled instead. At breakfast, I kissed her cheek. I asked how her day was. I played the role of the oblivious fool she believed I was. And she played hers, the confident liar who thought the game was still under her control. But between us, I was the only one who knew the rules had changed. She thought I was blind, but I was watching everything. She thought I was weak, but I was building strength, and she thought I was still fumbling in the dark, but I had already lit the match that would burn her world down. There are lies people can twist, deny, or drown in excuses, and then there are truths so undeniable they crush every word in a person's throat. I wanted that kind of truth, the kind she could never talk her way out of. Her texts were enough to expose her. The hotel charges, the late-night rides, they were enough to destroy her image. But deep down, I wanted something that didn't just reveal betrayal. I wanted something that erased her illusions completely. The opportunity came quietly, almost by accident. A routine doctor's appointment, one she expected me to attend with her. She had been glowing about our future, talking about the baby, pretending as if everything was fine. I played along, nodding, holding her hand, listening as the doctor spoke. But when the tests were done, when the blood work was logged, I saw an opening. I made one call. Just one. And within days, the results were in my hand. DNA doesn't lie. And the child she called mine wasn't mine. When I first read the paper, there wasn't an explosion inside me. No shouting, no tears, just silence. A silence so sharp it felt like glass cutting through the last threads of whatever love I once had. My chest didn't ache. My eyes didn't burn. Instead, my breathing slowed. Steady. Calm. I wasn't broken. I was free. I carried the envelope home like a weapon. Not to swing wildly in rage, but to strike with precision. She was humming when I walked in, setting plates on the table, completely unaware that her performance was about to end. I slid the envelope onto the counter and simply asked her one question. "Who's the father?" Her face collapsed instantly. The bravado she always carried, the arrogance that dripped from every word, gone in a heartbeat. She tried to speak, to twist, to spin, but the papers silenced her. She sobbed, begged, reached for me, but I didn't move. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I let her crumble under the weight of her own lies. Every tear she shed was useless against the armor I had built. For the first time in months, I felt control. Not the kind you grab with desperation, but the kind that comes when you know you've already won. I didn't tell her what I planned next. I didn't need to. The truth in that envelope was a blade, and I was about to place it in the one hand that could cut her deeper than I ever could. She thought I'd keep her secret. She thought the truth would stay locked between us, festering in silence while she regained control. But betrayal doesn't get buried. It spreads, and I knew exactly where to plant it. Her father had always admired me. To him, I was the steady one, the man who had given his daughter a home, stability, respect. He treated me like a son. That bond was her biggest shield, the one she leaned on every time we argued. She believed no matter what happened, her father would always take her side. So that night, when she cried and begged, I left the envelope right where I knew it would cut deepest, on the counter between the wine glasses she had set for dinner with her parents. And then I walked away. The next evening, as planned, her father arrived. She didn't even have the chance to hide it. The envelope was still there, open, the truth spilling out like poison. I wasn't inside when he found it, but I didn't need to be. Later, standing just beyond her doorway, I heard the storm break. "Do you know what he just did?" His voice thundered, but it wasn't rage at me. It was at her. "Do you realize what kind of man you lost? Do you have any idea what you've destroyed?" Her sobs carried through the walls, frantic, desperate. She tried to spin excuses, to rewrite the story, but her father wasn't buying it. Every word he threw at her was another dagger. He wasn't just disappointed, he was furious, betrayed on my behalf. I leaned against the car outside, listening, not needing to step in. The beauty of it was that I didn't have to raise my voice, didn't have to lift a hand. Her own father delivered the punishment she feared most, the loss of his respect, his pride, his trust. For years, she believed she could toy with me, bend me, push me until I broke. But in that moment, she realized she hadn't just lost me. She had lost the one man whose approval defined her entire life. And the best part? I didn't have to say a word. Her father's fury was just the spark. What came after was the firestorm she never saw coming. In the days that followed, the silence between us wasn't just distance, it was strategy. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing what I was planning. Instead, I let the truth breathe, spread, and infect every corner of her carefully constructed world. Her father couldn't keep it contained. He was a man of pride, and when pride is wounded, it seeks an audience. He told her mother, her cousins, the entire extended family. One by one, people she relied on began to look at her with new eyes. No longer the golden daughter, but the disgrace who gambled away a marriage and a family legacy. But that was only half the ruin. The other half was her lover. He wasn't some secret Prince Charming waiting to rescue her. He was a man with his own image to protect, a job, a reputation, a wife he hadn't left yet. When whispers of their affair reached his circle, his mask cracked. He stopped answering her calls. The hotel bookings ceased. The late-night messages vanished. The man she had risked everything for evaporated into thin air. She tried to run to me, to spin the story as though she had made a mistake, as though I could somehow rewind time. But every word she spoke was hollow. I didn't argue, didn't shout. I simply looked at her with that calm silence that told her she no longer had any power over me. And then came the final blow. Her friends. Those same people she confided in, who once admired her confidence, now saw weakness. Betrayal is contagious. Nobody wants to stand too close. Invitations disappeared. Calls dried up. Slowly, she wasn't just losing me, she was losing everyone. I watched from a distance, detached, as her world collapsed piece by piece. And the truth is, I didn't have to lift a single finger. All I did was show the world who she really was. I had stayed quiet long enough. Watching her life unravel from a distance was satisfying, but there was still one card I hadn't played. One truth she had buried so deep she thought no one would ever find it. It wasn't about the texts, the late-night meetings, or even the DNA results. Those had already scorched her reputation and broken her illusions. This was about something larger, something permanent. She had built her career on connections, her father's influence, her image of being the perfect wife, the picture of stability. But I held evidence that shattered all of it. Bank records, expense reports, hotel bills, all carefully documented in her name. I packaged it neatly, every receipt, every message, every timestamp. I didn't send it to her. I sent it to the one place where appearances mattered most: her job. The company she worked for prided itself on family values, on clean reputations. When the board received the anonymous file, her carefully curated persona collapsed in a single meeting. They couldn't have someone like her representing them. Her position, her prestige, her income. It was all gone overnight. I didn't stop there. The financial fallout was swift. Without her job and with her father refusing to support her, she was drowning. The same woman who once mocked me for being too stable, too boring, now scrambled to pay rent on the very house she had once told me to leave. The pool she and her lover once swam in was drained, not just of water, but of meaning. When she finally reached out, her voice was a shadow of the arrogance it once carried. She whispered through the phone, begging for just one chance, one conversation. I listened in silence, let her words hang in the air, then ended the call with the same sound that had started this all: the quiet click of the door shutting behind me. The final strike wasn't about shouting or revenge in flames. It was about precision. She had gambled that I would crawl back, that I would beg. Instead, I left her with nothing but the wreckage of her own lies, forced to face a world that now saw her clearly. Walking away wasn't just about leaving her behind. It was about reclaiming myself. For months, I had been living in the shadows of her betrayal, second-guessing every move, doubting my worth, drowning in questions with no answers. But once the truth was exposed, once she was stripped of her illusions, I realized something powerful. Her downfall was not the end of me. It was the beginning. The silence that once felt suffocating now felt clean, like fresh air after a storm. No more secrets lurking in my home, no more false smiles at breakfast, no more rehearsed lies disguised as love. For the first time in years, I felt light. I could breathe. At first, I kept to myself. I rebuilt slowly. New routines. Morning runs instead of tense breakfasts. Quiet evenings with books instead of arguments or suspicion. Every small step felt like laying a new brick in the foundation of the life I was building. This time, one built on truth. Friends who had once thought I was lucky to have her began to see the truth too. When the story of her betrayal reached them, their pity shifted into respect. They saw me not as the man who had been left, but as the man who had walked away with dignity and strength. Their words, "You handled it better than any of us could have," were more than just comfort. They were validation, proof that I hadn't lost. I had won in the only way that mattered, by refusing to let her destroy me. But it wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving. The energy I once wasted on suspicion and heartbreak, I poured into my work, my health, my passions. And it showed. Opportunities opened. Doors that had once seemed closed began to swing wide. Every success became a silent answer to the voice in my head that once asked if I was enough. Yes, I was enough. I always had been. She just never saw it. Or maybe she was too blinded by her own greed and illusions to recognize it. Meanwhile, I knew she was watching. Mutual friends told me how she had tried to spin the story, how she wanted people to believe I had abandoned her. But the truth was louder than her lies. People saw through her, and worse for her, they admired me. My rise from the ashes wasn't just about proving her wrong. It was about proving myself right. I wasn't broken. I wasn't discarded. I was unshackled. And the best part? This was only the beginning. Her downfall didn't arrive with a bang. It came creeping, slow and relentless, like water leaking through a ceiling, silent at first, then impossible to ignore. While I was rebuilding my life, she was stumbling through the ruins of hers. The man she risked everything for? Gone. Not with a dramatic goodbye, not even with a fight. Just vanished. Friends later told me he stopped answering her calls, blocked her on social media, left her standing in the wreckage with nothing but the echoes of her own choices. She had gambled with her family, her marriage, and her dignity, and lost everything in a single hand. But her humiliation didn't stop there. Her father, the man who once defended her no matter what, wanted nothing to do with her. The truth I had left for him was undeniable. The DNA test, the messages, the evidence of her deception. It had destroyed the image he once held of her, and when he turned his back on her, she felt the weight of a rejection she never thought possible. Financially, too, her life began to unravel. The support she counted on, mine, her father's, even the lover's promises, was gone. Bills piled up. The glamorous lifestyle she tried to maintain crumbled. She was forced to face the truth. Betrayal doesn't pay the rent, and lies don't keep the lights on. Meanwhile, whispers spread. Mutual friends, colleagues, even neighbors, they all knew now. Every fake smile she tried to wear cracked under the weight of their judgment. She became the subject of hushed conversations, of pitying looks, of whispered reminders that choices have consequences. And through it all, I stayed silent. That was the beauty of it. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to defend myself, didn't need to fight her lies. The truth spoke louder than I ever could. Every person she encountered, every bridge she had burned, every door that closed in her face, it was all the echo of her own actions. I heard about her struggles, of course. Friends mentioned it, sometimes with concern, sometimes with schadenfreude. But I never asked for details. I didn't need them. Her suffering wasn't mine to carry. I had laid down that weight the moment I walked away. Yet, deep inside, I couldn't deny a quiet satisfaction. Not joy at her pain, but justice. She had tried to break me, to diminish me, to make me crawl. Instead, she was the one left crawling, reaching for pieces of a life she had shattered with her own hands. I used to think closure would come with confrontation, with raised voices, accusations, and slammed doors. But in the end, closure came quietly, almost elegantly, like the last page of a book you didn't want to end but needed to finish. Weeks after walking out, I crossed paths with her one last time. Not by choice, by fate. I was leaving a cafe downtown when she stumbled in. Her eyes, once so sharp with arrogance, now looked hollow. Her clothes were wrinkled, her posture slouched, her confidence shattered. For a moment she froze, as if seeing me reminded her of who she used to be, and what she had lost. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but no words came out. The silence between us was heavier than anything she could have said. She wanted me to see her suffering, to acknowledge her regret, maybe even to offer her some piece of comfort. But that wasn't mine to give anymore. So I simply nodded. No anger, no bitterness, just a quiet acknowledgement that the game was over, and the winner had already walked away. Then I turned, stepped into the sunlight, and left her in the shadow she had built for herself. That moment wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. For the first time in years, I felt untethered. I wasn't the betrayed husband anymore. I wasn't the fool she had mistaken me for. I was me, whole, stronger, and finally unchained from the weight of her lies. And that's the real victory. Not just proving her wrong, not just exposing her to those she feared most, but reclaiming myself. She wanted me to beg. She thought I'd crawl. Instead, I rose. And while she's left begging life for scraps of dignity, I walk forward with everything that matters: self-respect, peace, and a future untouched by her shadow. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it looks like silence, like walking away, like choosing not to carry someone else's destruction as your own. So, if you take anything from my story, let it be this: never let betrayal define you. Let it refine you. And now, I ask you, what's the most satisfying justice you've ever seen after betrayal? Share it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more powerful stories, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next one. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living better.